The other area, okay, that you might get a query is the confirmed cost. So obviously we expect to pay £10 each for these 5, okay, but if let's say they invoice me 11, okay, now it's up to me whether I actually accept this, okay, and just save and close or save and post or whatever, and then that will actually put them in at £11 each. Now, at this point right now, before I save this bill, if I create the debit note, okay, it will put them in at £10 each, affecting the average cost at £10, okay, and the debit note, okay, will be raised for £1 each, okay. So if I go create debit note, okay, yeah. So what's happened here is I've actually changed the detail amount, and the values are now different from the actual net amount on the invoice. In theory, what you should have done was looked at the invoice and typed in the actual amounts and balanced back to those amounts. But obviously, I'm cheating a little bit here, so I'm just going to click that so it kind of balances out. So I'm going to create the debit note, and what you'll see is it will automatically come up with any quantity differences if we've been over invoiced, invoiced for more than we've actually had delivered, and any cost differences, and it goes, the quantity times the difference. So it's saying there's £5 difference here. Do you want to create a debit note? The a lot of the problem a lot of accounting departments have is that they have a lot of purchase invoices coming through the door, and if they don't deal with the query, they can't process the invoice. They end up with lots of stacks of invoices that they can't, they've got queries on. What this allows you to do is process the invoice at the £11. Okay, so that goes onto the supplier ledger. But then it also allows you to process a debit note right now. Okay, so I'm going to create the debit note, and that will go on as a transaction on the supplier account. Okay, so then you can see right there, yeah, that was the bill at the higher amount, and then there's the actual debit note at the other amount, and it actually tells you in the notes, yeah, that the original cost was 10, the invoice cost was 11. Okay, that's why I want the debit. That's why I want the £1. And obviously, if you print that off, that's a document you can send to your supplier to say, you need to credit note me, yeah, but I'm actually raising a debit note because I agreed to pay you, £10 each, but you invoiced me £11 each. Okay. And that's it. So what you've been able to do is, instead of end up with a stack of purchase invoices on the desk, you've been able to process them and process any kind of debit notes that you want to get your credits, and not have stacks of paperwork lying around. It's up to you, obviously, whether you do that or not. You don't have to raise a debit note. You can just put them on at 11 and accept it, and that's it. Okay. Creating returns to suppliers. That's a feature of the advanced version, okay? But you can still obviously enter credit notes for any particular supplier, okay? So you can enter, whatever it is, the invoice number, however much it is, and this is how you process a credit note, okay? Okay, supplier payment. This is an individual supplier payment where you pay, you're writing out one check, let's say. Down here we have the date. There's the actual check number. If you tick this little box here, it'll put the next check number in that it thinks that you should be using, or otherwise you can overtype it. How much? Well, let's say we're going to pay £100. Okay, so I'll say save. And it's exactly like the customer receipt section. If you go to the allocate, you can see any debit notes or any other outstanding payments you might have outstanding, and obviously these are all the outstanding bills and invoices. So if I click on that, you can actually see that what's happened is it's allocated the 100 against that outstanding amount of 1360. So there's 1,260 outstanding on the account. So I'll save that, and it saves the allocation. And again, as mentioned in the customer demonstration, we only actually take loss or gains from a foreign currency point of view at the point of allocation. Okay. Okay, so to find a supplier, let's look at this supplier account. This is exactly like the customer account, effectively. You've got contacts, notes, activities, emails, all the different kind of things that can happen to a supplier. And if you look at a particular contact record, okay, the notes, activities, emails and faxes are contact centered, so they're basically just to do with that particular contact. We have a setup tab, which means that we can decide on the currency, the default payment terms, shipping methods, and how we actually pay this supplier usually. Okay, so you can decide whether you pay them by check remittance, check only, e-banking, remittance. Obviously, this is e-banking. This is where we type in their sort code, account number, and all that sort of stuff. And if we have a factor company, so if this supplier factors their debt, yeah, then we can actually put a factor company in, and then when we do a payment run, yeah, it will actually pay the factor company rather than the actual supplier. So if we did a check run, it would put the factor company's name on the actual check, yeah, and their address on it. If we did a backs run, then obviously it would put the factor company's bank details in rather than the actual suppliers. Okay, so let's look at products. This is very similar to the customer setup for pricing. So for every supplier we hold the supplier part code and the supplier description for all our stock items. We also can set up individual pricing from each supplier. So for example, we would specify here the items that we usually buy off this supplier, the usual lead time, and the usual cost price. And if we actually did get quantity breaks off them based on units of measure, we could actually drill down and actually put those in as well. So it's as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. Analysis in supplier is what you're trading, your monthly trading with them, and your turnover and transactions. You can see all the requisitions, you can see purchase orders, goods received, and obviously we've got a ledger view which shows it all, and we can see that basically there's there's been £100. If I can say all, you can see that there's that payment we put on, and there's 0 outstanding on it. So if I double click on that, it'll actually give me the allocation that we just did just now. Okay,